Webinar on the rulings of Hajj and Umrah and the journey to Makkah al-Mukarramah and the visitation to the mosque of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina al-Munawwara. It's an honor to be a part of these webinar series talking about this journey of a lifetime. Thank you to Essential Islam, to Guidance Hub, and to Isnad Institute for organizing our Hajj trip that many of you who are watching will be going on. And for those viewers who are going with other groups or learning about Hajj, we hope you have a blessed journey as well. Inshallah, today we will be talking about the rulings of Ihram. And this is one of the most important sections on the rulings of Hajj and Umrah, because one of the key components, as mentioned before, of the Hajj journey and the whole of Umrah really is to be in a state of Ihram. So we're going to define this term and what it means, etc., inshallah ta'ala, and then talk about the sanctity of this state and the rulings associated with this and some of the penalties associated with violating the rules of Ihram, inshallah ta'ala. But to put that in context, you're going to be going on a journey, and during this journey, at some point, you're going to change your clothes. You may change them from home as well, and you're going to put on two plain pieces of cloth. For the ladies, it'll just be a change of clothes into clean clothes, plain clothes as well, but they may be stitched for a lady, of course. And you'll be changing your intention. You'll be making an intention and you'll be changing your state of being. Now, this change isn't really a physical change. Right? Whether you physically change things or not doesn't make a difference. What really makes the difference is the spiritual change. Being in a state of Ihram, by putting on the garments and intending to go on Hajj, is a kind of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a step where we are saying, "Oh Allah, I'm at your service," which is why we say labbaik, Allahumma labbaik, when entering into the state of Ihram. It's a state of being in servitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of isolating everything and yourself from the world and going to a specific place with a specific intention to achieve and perform certain rituals and Hajj rites and Umrah rites that we will be going through in future seminars once again with you, inshallah ta'ala. So just to kind of mention how to go into Ihram, it's very simple and straightforward. There is certain places around Makkah al-Mukarramah called the miqat. It's a new term for some of you maybe. So what does miqat mean? Miqat means a point in time or place, right? So it's a place really, although it can mean a point in time. And these places are identified and defined by the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith, explaining to the Muslims from his time till the end of time, the cut-off points before somebody who's going to Makkah has to change into the state of Ihram. So if you're before this point, you don't have to be in Ihram, you don't have to change your clothes yet, and you can wait. But as soon as you pass this point, you must have changed. So you're going to make the change before, at some point. But you must have made that change before you pass that boundary, if you like, these limits, and enter into the sacred area of, actually behind, after the miqat, wherever you had come from. So you may come from the north or the south or the east or the west. There are several points for the people of Yemen, for the people of Iraq, for the people of Medina, for the people of Jeddah, etc. Right? Where they come from the port, they come from land, etc. But one of the things that's really important to understand is that wherever you come from, you have to be in a state of Ihram before you make that transition from the miqat. So at the miqat, everything stops. And what starts is a new area. The name of this new area is called the Hill. And Hill means from halal. It means the place where it's okay to do things. You'll be in Ihram and you go in, but the land is not the sacred land yet. The sacred land of Makkah and surrounding areas is further on. So the hill area starts after the miqat. Then as you're going towards Makkah, you'll come to another boundary, and this boundary is the haram boundary. And the haram comes from the word haram, which although means forbidden, here means sacred. It means that certain things are forbidden in the haram, around, not just in Makkah, but around Makkah as well. Sacred lands of the haram, including Muzdalifah, Mina, and Arafat, where the Hajj rites are performed, including surrounding areas of Makkah, Al-Mukarramah, and the blessed house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you reach that area, you're now in the haram. And in the haram, of course, the center point of the haram is the Kaaba itself. So we're on that journey. This is a contextual thing, right? And when we reach that point of the miqat, we move into ihram. Now, when you move into ihram, there are certain rules. They're called the ahkam of ihram, the rules of ihram. And we're going to go through those rules today, inshallah ta'ala. So how do you come into ihram? You put on your clothes, you make the intention, and you say labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka, innal hamda laka wa ni'mata la sharika lak, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. You say the talbiyah, and you say that, and you make the intention, oh Allah, I intend to make Hajj and Umrah, or I intend to make Hajj, or I intend to make Umrah, whatever your intention is, and you are now in a state of ihram. This could occur from your home. It could occur all the way from home. It could occur on the flight you're on. It could occur from the airport. It has to occur before you go across the miqat boundary. Now, when you're in a state of ihram, certain rules apply, and also certain rules apply when you're in the haram itself. There's two kind of sacred things or areas. One is you and your state of ihram, which is anywhere in the world. If you're from your home, you're on the airplane, you're not in Makkah yet, you're not in the sacred land yet, but you're in the laws of ihram. And the person who's in ihram actually is called a muhrim. So a muhrim is somebody who has made the ihram, and maybe at home, maybe at the airport, maybe on the flight, wherever they are, before the miqat. The haram itself is the land which is sacred and has been made sacred by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what are the rules therefore that are a muhrim, so who's a muhrim, somebody who's in a state of ihram, is bound by? What are the rules that you have to adhere to? And I think I likened it to prayer, salah, in the previous webinar, where we said that when you say Allahu Akbar, you go into a state of prayer, you have special rules. You're not allowed to violate certain rules, otherwise you break your prayer. So you can't talk, you can't eat, you can't even turn away from the qibla in prayer. There's certain rules that are specific to salah, and they come after you do the takbir of tahrima, which again has a similar meaning of being forbidden, like this sacred state of prayer. So this tells me very important. When we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should feel that different ritual state. It's a state of being that's changed. So when we do wudu, it changes us from being or lacking purity, ritual purity, to being purified, to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say Allahu Akbar, we enter into a new phase, a new level of consciousness of standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worshipping Him in prayer. So when we make the ihram, we should understand that we're now in special rulings. And that's why the rulings are there for, to remind us that we are under the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a submission, like we said. It's a surrendering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what are these rules? For those of you who have the Hajj and Umrah, Essentials of Hajj and Umrah booklet or pocket guide, that is where we're going to be talking from today, inshallah, from page 33 onwards, which is the rulings of Ihram. And this is available. We have new copies being printed currently by Essential Islam. So do message Essential Islam on Facebook or Instagram, or drop us a message, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll try and facilitate. Those who are on our group will get a copy of this as part of the Hajj package and welcome pack. And if you have a copy, then please do follow on page 33. So it says here, it says the following will not be permitted for somebody in the state of ihram, i.e. a muhrim. So it says to apply any form of perfume or fragrance. I think this is a well-known thing as well, that when you're in ihram, you can't apply perfume, you can't apply fragrance, you can't use fragrance soaps and such things. You're not allowed to apply perfume and fragrance. And applying perfume, and fragrance and so forth, even if it's unintentionally, is a violation of ihram, right? And we're going to be talking about the violations and the different penalties that could occur for violating the ihram after going through the things that are prohibited, or the things that are not permitted during ihram. So first of all, applying any form of fragrance. Number two, to cut or pluck any of your hair. So to cut or pluck or trim or otherwise remove any of your bodily hair, whatever part of the body that is. To cut the nails of your feet or hands. So cutting the nails is also forbidden. Of course, when we look at ihram and how to go into ihram, we do have the concept of paring the nails, of washing oneself, of applying perfume before ihram itself. Yes, so you should ready yourself for ihram. But once you have entered into the state of ihram, no longer can you do these things. So you can't cut the nails. Okay, I accidentally cut my nails. I didn't know this. What do I do? We'll come on to that inshallah ta'ala, but also I want to make a point here. If this happens to you whilst you're out there, then seek advice. Go to the teachers in your group. Inshallah, come to us. We have Shaykh Yasin, Mufti Wajid, and Shaykh Anosheen on our trip. So ask, and inshallah we're there to serve and to guide the Hajis that are coming with us on this trip. That's very important, that you don't think that I read this or I did that. If you're not sure, you're not quite aware of what's happened, then speak to a teacher and get guidance for your situation. And this is a test of Hajj. Some people will make mistakes. Some people do things, just out of forgetfulness. Whatever the case, seek advice, seek guidance, and inshallah, whatever the penalty is, it's not the penalties aren't there to punish you. Let's say they're called penalties, but they actually called dam, which is sacrifice. So you're actually going to give a sacrifice or sadaqah. So you may not do the full penalty, as it's called. You may do a lesser penalty of giving some charity, which we'll talk about later on, inshallah ta'ala. But again, if you're not sure what to do, seek advice. It says here to apply or touch scent intentionally. So you can't apply fragrance perfume, but you can't touch it either. You can still touch the Kaaba, a good point made here, and kiss the black stone, even though there a lot of scent is applied to them, if your intentions are to carry out the sunnah or to take the blessings of those blessed places, blessed Kaaba and black stone, but not to take the fragrance smell nice, because it's inevitable, they're fragrance, and there'll be some smell there and some kind of minimal amount of fragrance that transfers. But don't worry, when you're practicing the sunnah, you're not there to perfume yourself, right? Whereas whether you get perfume and perfume yourself forgetfully or intentionally, the goal was to perfume yourself, and therefore that's a violation. It says here to kill or hunt, so you're not allowed to kill an animal, or any form of animal, by the way, even insects, or hunt, obviously, like game or anything that was hunted in the time, and it still is actually, right? To partake in any marital relations, any form, whatever that is a violation of ihram. So it could be something as simple as touching each other or kissing, or the full act itself. All of that is a violation of ihram. Depending on what you do, there's a penalty we'll talk about later, inshallah. To quarrel, fight, use bad language, and to engage in useless talk is a violation of ihram, is wrong. To argue, to be rude, to do these kind of things, bad language, is a violation of ihram. This violation doesn't have an actual penalty, but it's highly recommended to give some sadaqah, to give some charity as a kind of expiation or atonement for that lapse. For males to wear stitched clothing, like we said earlier, males have to wear 2 plain cloths. Ladies can wear stitched clothing, it's not a problem, and they should wear stitched clothing, of course. But for males, any stitched clothing will not be allowed. If you happen to put something on forgetfully or intentionally, that would be a violation and would require some form of atonement. For males to wear shoes or slippers that hide the instep, i.e. the raised part of the part of the foot. The foot in instep is the raised part of the foot. That should be uncovered. And even if you're wearing some form of socks, which can be worn, they shouldn't be covering that part of the foot. So in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, some people didn't have foot gear, they didn't have any footwear. So they had the khuffain, which are foot gear made of leather socks as they call them today. So the Prophet said you can wear them, but cut them from below the ankle. In other words, cut off anything that's below the ankle to leave that part and above exposed. So we can't, so leather socks can't be worn to wipe over during ihram. There's just foot gear to protect the sole of your feet. You can wear something, And whatever you do wear to protect the sole of your feet, then let the top of your feet be uncovered, i.e. the instep, or most of the top of the foot basically. And for males to cover their heads is not allowed during Ihram. So during Ihram, males have to keep their hair uncovered, their head uncovered. Even if they haven't got no hair, they keep their head uncovered. This is all the time, so don't put something on for prayer and take it off. Whenever you're in Ihram, for males, you leave the head uncovered. And for females, whenever you're in Ihram, you leave the face uncovered. At no point will a female cover her face during Ihram. Throughout Ihram, of course, she covers everything else, but the face will not be covered for Ihram timings. So they're more or less the things that are not permitted during the state of Ihram. Now, the question now arises, okay, I violated one of those things. I made a mistake. I don't know actually, is there a mistake or not? Is this allowed or not? I did this, I applied this. Is this actually a violation of Ihram or not? What do I have to do? So the violations of Ihram are divided into categories. On page 34 of the booklet and 35, those are discussed. So we'll move on to that inshallah ta'ala. So the first category is when it's wajib to perform a sacrifice. Now I'm going to use the word dam from now on. Dam in Arabic means blood. And basically that's a metaphorical expression to refer to a sacrifice. You're going to give blood, i.e. you're going to perform a blood, i.e. you're going to give a dam. You're going to sacrifice an animal. And what is the animal that needs to be sacrificed? Simply put, a sheep or a goat of 1 year age or more, I believe. And that suffices to make up for any errors made in Ihram of the following category. Okay, so not everything in Ihram or every violation of Ihram requires a sacrifice. The highest form is a sacrifice. There are lesser violations, which we'll talk about in the other categories of violations. Now we're talking about the actual violations. Those were the non-permitted matters. Okay, I violated them. What level of violation do I have? 4 levels, inshallah ta'ala. It says, first of all, the full sacrifice, which is for applying perfume, and if it covers a full limb, so if you perfume your full hand or your full face, or you apply something that has perfume in, is scented and has perfume over a full body member, the hand's probably the most common example, then you would have to perform a sacrifice. You have to give a dam. Okay? The question now arises, what do I do? How do I do that? We'll talk about that at the end, inshallah ta'ala. Second of all, use hair dye or henna. Henna or hair dye is also a form of violating the ihram or the principles of ihram, of applying perfume, scent, or doing something to beautify oneself during ihram. And so hair dye or henna, coloring the hair, would also be a violation of the ihram and would require for one to perform the sacrifice. Of course, if you do the hair itself, not like you did a fingernail. We're not talking about applying henna or dye to just a fingernail. We're talking about the hair, the whole hair, the beard itself, let's say for a male, that would require a sacrifice. Apply oil, and it then covers a full limb, so for perfume and scent, and also for oil as well. It comes under the category of perfume, scent, or duhan, which is oily, fatty substance. It shouldn't be applied as well. And again, that's for a full limb. Then it says to wear sewn, stitched clothing for a full day. So if you actually wear something that's stitched for a full day, that's when you have to give the sacrifice. If you wear it for less than a full day, there'll be a different penalty, a lesser penalty, which we'll come on to. And also, similarly, if you cover your head for a full day, then that would require a sacrifice. And if it's only for part of the day or less than a full day, then there would be depending on how long of the day as well. A full day could be, 3/4 is enough to classify as a full day, really. But if it's not a long period, let's say for an hour, then there's a lesser penalty or expiation to make, which we'll talk about inshallah ta'ala. It says shave 1/4 of the hair on your head when you're not allowed to shave your head. So of course shaving the head is fine when it's time to. But when you still have rights of Hajj or Umrah left and you shave your head mistakenly or wrongfully, or you didn't know the rulings and you shaved it too early, then if you've done a quarter or more of your head, trimmed a quarter or more of your head, then that would require a sacrifice to be made. If you shave your body hair as well, so the body hair here refers to the pubic regions, of shaving those hairs. If you were to do that, that would require a atonement of giving a sacrifice. Cut the nails of your hands or your feet in one sitting. Of course, again, so if you cut the nails of one hand all together, if you cut two nails and you forget, I think, oh, I'm in Ihram, I should be cutting my nails. Then cutting two nails is not a violation that requires a sacrifice. It's a lesser violation. We'll come on to that again. And also it has to be done in one sitting. Okay, so meaning that you did, all five together. Because if you did two and you stopped, you'd pay a penalty for that. If you did two again later on in the same day or the next day and you stopped, forgetfully, then that's another lesser violation, right? So they'd be counted as two separate lesser violations. And then it says, omit a wajib action of Hajj or Umrah intentionally or unintentionally. So we talked about the wajib acts in our previous webinar. So all those things that were wajib, like the tawaf al-wida, staying in Mina, stoning the jamarat, the 3 jamarat every day are wajib. To miss less than the whole amount is an expiation, is a lesser expiation. To miss the whole jamarat of the whole day, a 1 day jamarat would require the 3 stones, the pillars that you have to stone. Missing all that as a whole day would require a dam sacrifice. If you manage to do some of it and not all of it, then it'd be a lesser penalties. If you missed a few, I did, so that's the question, I missed a few of my stones, I didn't get, I only had 6, I couldn't find another one, what do? You give some sadaqah, you give some charity, we'll talk about that inshallah ta'ala, but no sacrifice to give for that. But if you just didn't make it on that day for whatever reason, and nobody did it on your behalf as well, then you'd have to perform a sacrifice. Then it says at the bottom here, 1 dam, i.e. sacrifice, a sheep or goat will be sufficient if you violate one or more of the conditions listed above. So if you happen to do multiple violations of one ihram, meaning you came into ihram and for that 3, 4, 5 days you're in ihram, or 2 days, 1 day sometimes, this can be quick in umrah, then how many times did you do violation? 3, 4, they all count as one violation. One sacrifice will cover everything. But if you now come out of ihram and you come into a new ihram, the rulings of ihram start again, and if you make mistakes, that's a second sacrifice and a second violation, separate to the first one. So 2 different ihrams don't combine, but the same ihram, and whatever happens during that whole period of time counts as one. Then it says when sadaqah becomes wajib. So when you give sadaqah. Now sadaqah is not the same as giving a sacrifice, much less. It says here sadaqah will need to be offered for each offense mentioned. What is sadaqah? Is half a sa' of wheat, which is equivalent to 1.6 kilograms of wheat, or its value in cash. So what is a kg of wheat today? It's about £1, let's say, different values for different qualities. So 1.6 kgs is £1.60, right? You could say it's a bit more, let's say it's £1.50, £2, right? It could be a bit on the safe side. This is £2, £2.50. That's a sadaqah now. It's half a sa' of wheat. That's your sadaqah. So what's £2.50 in riyals? It's 15 riyals or 14, 13 riyals. So if whatever it is, it's going to be about 15 riyals to be safe, okay? Minimum. You can give more. You can say the sadaqah is 20 riyals. Maybe that's what some people will tell you. Some people say it's about 30 riyals, right? Don't worry. It's an estimation of the value of wheat, and obviously that differs from place to place, from time to time, from quality to quality. So wheat has its values, and so whichever value you use is going to have a different outcome. But let's call it 20 riyals. Why am I using riyals for? Because you're going to be in Makkah, Medina, and they're going to be using that currency, so you're going to pay in that currency. And one thing to mention here, with all expiations and atonements, they have to be given in the haram. Now, who are you going to give your expiation to? When it comes to a sacrifice, you have to get it done at a special place, or you have to do it somewhere in the haram and give that meat to charity, or give it somewhere. So it's all a process that's done by your Hajj operator. So speak to us, speak to Hajj operators, or you can go to actually designated places where they say, you have a sacrifice to make, you have a penalty, and they give you a receipt, they write you a receipt out saying you've made a payment to have a sacrifice made on your behalf for violations of Hajj, for your Ihram during Hajj, and this will expiate for your mistakes, and they give you a receipt, and you can make the payment. So a sacrifice may cost, I don't know, normally it's like 70, 80, 90, £100, and it might be different rates, different values in different parts of the world. So it could be 4, 5, 6, 700 riyals. Allahu alam, I don't know the actual amounts. They may differ from operator, person who facilitates it, to a different person who facilitates it. So that's something you need to find out and speak about, and we can help you with, inshallah ta'ala. As for sadaqah, if you've got charity to give, then you just got to find a poor person. You don't have to give it to organization or a person there, you must make sure you give it to a poor person. So you find a poor person around and you say, your violation was, let's say 25 riyals, or you did 2 or 3 violations, let's say 75 riyals. Go and give that to just poor people, and that's how you'd expiate if you made these following mistakes. It says you perfume less than a limb. So you perfume the part of the hand, you realize, you stop. If it's accidental, forgetful is a matter, it requires an expiation, and then you will have to do what? You have to give some sadaqah. That's all you got to do. And some say, okay, it's to the amount of, so if you do the tiny bit, then just give a few riyals. If you do a large amount, like not the full hand, but a decent amount, a quarter, then give, a sadaqah, right? The 1.6 kgs of wheat. It says you wear a hat or any stitched clothing for less than a day. Obviously for men only that applies to. So if you wear stitched clothing or you cover your head for less than a day, let's say for a few hours, then give sadaqah, give the charity. You shave less than 1/4 of the head, of course at a wrong time, whilst you're in ihram, or any other part of your body, the pubic region, you shave less than the full amount. You realize at some point you shouldn't be doing this, you stop, and then you'd have to pay a sadaqah for that mistake. Cut only one nail or cut somebody else's nail, right? So you only cut a nail or two, you'd have to pay a sadaqah, and you wouldn't have to pay the full expiation of sacrifice of a sheep or goat. It says perform tawaf al-qudum or tawaf al-wada' without wudu. So tawaf al-qudum is when you arrive. Tawaf al-wada' is when you depart. Now of course one of the wajibat of ihram, of tawaf, one of the wajibat, things you need for tawaf is ihram. Sorry, is wudu, excuse me. One of the wajibat of tawaf is wudu. So you need to stay of ritual purity, wudu, to perform ihram. And if you don't, then technically it's valid, but you need to then perform sadaqah here. Right? So you have to give sadaqah if you performed that tawaf, the one you arrival tawaf, or the farewell tawaf, you give sadaqah if you have to do it without wudu. Which might sound like, I don't have to have wudu for it, I can just give sadaqah and go. Yes, but that's not what you should do. It's actually a sinful thing to do that, to deliberately say, I'm not doing it with wudu, I'm just going to go do it and walk off. That's not something that a Muslim would do. You make wudu, you make your tawaf in wudu. If, for instance, you don't finish it wudu, or some of your group's about to leave, you're in a rush, going and making wudu is going to be so difficult, and you end up doing it without wudu for whatever reason, then you'd pay a sadaqah to make up for that violation. Then it says, throw less than the stipulated amount of pebbles. Throw less than the stipulated amount of pebbles. So if the total, for each pebble that is neglected, a sadaqah must be paid. So every time you miss a stone, you give a sadaqah. That covers your stone being missed. If the total amount of stones equates to 21, which is a full day, 777, or more, so whether it's more than that, comes under a sacrifice. So that's like missing a wajibat of Hajj. A wajib of Hajj is to perform the stoning of all 3 jamarat together at one stage on the first day is 1, and then the second, third, and fourth day is 3 of them, all 3 of them. That's a wajib, okay? Now if you miss that, then you'd perform the sacrifice. If you miss 1 or 2 stones, for every stone you miss, you give a sadaqah. Again, this term sadaqah here doesn't mean £1, £2, it means the sadaqah defined, 1.6 kg of wheat, or 20, 25, 30 riyals. Then the third category is when you don't even have to give a sadaqah. What is that? It says you need to offer less than the sadaqah if you kill any small insect in the state of ihram. So you end up, unfortunately stepping on an ant or insect, or you kill a flea or a fly on yourself. You shouldn't be doing that. But if you do that kind of thing, then you just give like 5 riyals, give 10 riyals, a few riyals here and there to expiate for that. One of the things that you give that for as well is, for instance, like you did wudu, for instance, and after doing wudu, you see a few hairs in your hand. Now you didn't deliberately pull hairs out, you haven't cut your hair, you haven't really done anything to violate ihram, but you have kind of through the act of touching yourself, and it's not plucking, but what they say is you give a sadaqah, give a riyal or 2 to kind of expiate for the few hairs that have come out. And if you're somebody who's got constantly having hairs fall out or come out whenever you put your hair through your beard, hand through your beard or through your head or whatever, then don't worry, don't take it to like, I've got to give sadaqah every time. At the end of your ihram, when you've come out of ihram, give 5 riyals, give 10 riyals as kind of a safety net where you've kind of covered yourself for ihram, right? So I'll always give a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with giving sadaqah or giving a bit more charity and so forth. to expiate with the intention. If there's no expiation really required, then at least you've given sadaqah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there's the final point to mention before we finish today, inshallah ta'ala, which is very important. And again, I would seek advice and come to the teachers and get clarity on these matters. But what if you have to do these things? So we talked about covering the head. What if you have to cover your head? It's just not medicinally, health-wise possible to uncover the head, right? What if you have to apply a liquid ointment or something to your body? What happens in such a situation? You're actually required to do this, health-wise or necessity. So we've got a note at the end here in the booklet as well, so it's good and something we should, mention. And you need to get clarity for if you ever come to these situations. Is that it says if someone applies perfume, Shaykh said, or wears a sewn garment with a valid excuse, meaning it was deliberate, knowingly, with a valid excuse, then the pilgrim is given a choice. So you have a choice now. So you're not forced to pay anything, but you have a choice. You can, of course, pay. You can give a sacrifice because you covered your head for the whole day. You've applied ointment or a perfume or some kind of treatment to a whole limb, let's say. So you can give the sacrifice if you wish, or you may give charity. So you can give charity to 6 needy people, right? And each person gets 3 sa'as. So again, we go back to that. Half a sa' was 1.6 kgs, a full sa' is 3.2, times that by 3, about 10 kgs of flour. So literally you can go give 10 kgs of flour to someone, to 6 people actually, 60 kgs, which is going to cost quite a bit, which is probably still less than a sacrifice. Or you can give the value, so you can say, right, it works out to about 30, 40 quid of flour, 50 quid of flour, whatever, riyals, whatever, and I give that as sadaqah, I'll give it to people. Or you may fast for 3 days. Right, so if it's you can't afford it or you don't want to pay, you want to fast, you might not want to fast, you might want to pay. People are different, right? So if you want to fast, you can fast for 3 days, and that's whether you want to fast in Mecca, in Medina, when you come back home to the UK. You can fast any 3 consecutive days. It should be once you have decided to do that. Now, here's an important thing: if you decide to fast and you wait till the UK, because it might be difficult to fast whilst you're out there for some people, and you decide to fast when you come back to the UK, then remember, you have to fast. And if you don't want to fast and you want to go back to the penalty and the payment and the sacrifice and the sadaqah, then that has to be given in Makkah, in the Haram, right? Not here in the UK. You can't give it. You can give it here and have it transferred there, and you can pass it on to somebody who's going on Umrah or going to Makkah, etc. But you can't give it here. You can't say I'm giving this person charity or I'm doing a sacrifice here in the United Kingdom or America or wherever you are. You can't do that. You would have to give that sacrifice in Makkah al-Mukarramah, in the designated Haram area. So if you're going to fast, make sure you do it when you come back. Otherwise, you're going to send an expiation or a sacrifice and a sadaqah back. So giving sadaqah needs to be given to the people there in Makkah whilst you're there, and make sure you do that before you leave. And generally, one of the good acts to do before you leave Makkah is to give charity to a few people and get rid of a few extra riyals, etc. And really, that's what this is all about. So these have been a lot of rules and regulations, as you can see. And in Hajj, that might be kind of the feel people get, that rule, regulation, violation, what's going on. But really, it's all about reminding ourselves we're under the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are a slave. We are slaves. This is what we are. We as Muslims, as believers in God Almighty, we are here to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the purpose of our lives, is to prepare for Allah, meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to serve Him, to worship Him, and to sacrifice what we have for Him. And that's the purpose of all this. You're not under, Allah doesn't want to give you a hard time, but you're under these constraints and limits to remind you of your servitude, to remind you of your neediness as well, how much we need Allah. Look how much these things are blessings, but look how much we have to sacrifice for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's massive rewards for this sacrifice. So there's different ways of getting rewards in Islam. One is by doing an action such as praying, right? Such as helping people or giving charity, giving your wealth. Then there's ways of getting rewards by abstaining. Fasting is a prime example. You don't do anything. You just don't. You leave certain things, right? You leave your desires. Similarly, in Hajj, it's what they call a abandoning action, which is an act of worship. You leave certain acts, you stay away from them in order to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all this was really worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're staying away from this is actually an act of worship. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to fulfill the rights and regulations of Ihram, to be good muhrims, people who are aware of our state of Ihram. Ladies don't change their clothing necessarily or have a different garment, so it's harder for them sometimes to remember they're in Ihram. For men, sometimes, we forget that we're in Ihram sometimes, even though we've got the clothing on and we've got the garments and etc. So it's about building that state of God consciousness, right, and building that in ourselves. That's hopefully what we're going to be trying to do within our groups and our journey of Hajj. Not just merely do the rules and regulations, but to build that spiritual connection and God consciousness in every individual together as a group, as people who've gone on this journey together. So inshallah, looking forward to going on this journey with all of you, inshallah ta'ala. Thank you for watching. Hopefully we'll meet soon. Jazakumullah khairan and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.